A couple of things caught our eye this past week that involve students, high school students, being fed up and speaking out. On Friday afternoon, students walked out of class to protest inaction regarding climate change. That, as a United Nations report, drew a bright line below that crisis. And over the weekend, the Albuquerque Journal's Shelby Perea wrote a piece detailing student frustration over a lack of action by the APS school board on accepting funding from the National Rifle Association. Do the kids have it right? Here to answer that question and perhaps pose a few more, line regular Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group Public Relations is with us. Former state representative and another line regular, Daniel Foley, is here. Laura Sanchez-Rivey, our third line regular and Director of Government Relations with Affirm Incorporated. And a refreshingly fresh face that we're glad to have back at the table, Public Health Consultant Michael Bird. Michael, I'm going to start with you. Is it your sense that this generation is at a tipping point and they've just sort of had it with listening to folks like us sitting around tables, talking around these issues? Meanwhile, this climate report comes out in the same day they walked out of class saying 1 million species are under stress and could be gone in a short period of time. Have they had it? Is that it?
Well, they're not the only ones who've had it.
Sure.
I've had it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are reflecting a growing sentiment that really does exist out there, and instead of labeling protesters, maybe we should call them protectors, as the people in Standing Rock and DAPL who came out in terms of protecting their land, their water, and their resources from an illegal action that took place. I think across the globe, and particularly with this UN report, which clearly articulates the fact that the 1 million species that will cease to exist if we do not do something transformative, and is not only putting those species at risk, it is also, in case people haven't figured this out, putting mankind, all of us at risk.
That's right.
And the reality is that there has to be, as they point out, there is some time to act upon this. But if we fail to act, the consequences are dramatic in terms of it's unlike anything we will have ever seen before.
Good point there. Yep, exactly right. Laura, interesting, you've been around renewables a bunch and energy and things like this. Is this going to be the generation that flips the country on this? I mean, we can't seem to get it right in our generation right now. You're a little bit younger than me, maybe 2 generations. We haven't got it right. Is this the generation that's going to do it?
Well, if we wait until they get into a position of power to be able to do something themselves, it's going to be too late.
Good point.
It may already be too late.
Right.
I think one of the problems with, what's interesting is the job I find myself in now, I work with a lot of younger people, millennials for the most part, but this is a whole new generation. And I think, the idea of protesting or being visible about energy or climate issues is not new. I mean, there were young people, students, a lot of university students, who actually started Earth Day. One of them lives here in Albuquerque, Arturo Sandoval.
Right.
And he has been an activist for many, many years, and back in the 70s started, 1970 or whatever, I think it was 70, started Earth Day. So I think that energy from young people has always been there. The problem is that there's a disconnect between that energy and translating it into decision makers.
Right.
Decision makers are not really, I think they're tone deaf to that concern at that level. So does it turn into voting? Is it about making sure that they all vote? Because we saw even in recent elections, there was a lot of noise around young people, but we still had an older generation that voted.
Thank you.
And
That's
so
a good point there. Yep.
I'm not sure that, I think while they generate attention, whether it's on climate change or whether it's on gun violence issues, they generate a lot of attention by doing the walkouts and the protests. That somehow needs to be translated into action. And so I don't think that it's fair for us to sort of wait or to expect that generation is going to do something. I agree with Michael. The crisis is now. And really, we should have been doing something, 10,
right.
15, 20 years
That's
ago.
right. That's a good point there. They're up against the wall now, so they're acting out desperately. Daniel, the idea that this is not a partisan issue. We all need a healthy planet. We all need a healthy water, air, just everything. A conservative came out last week, a high-profile conservative, and wrote an interesting piece saying conservatives need to kind of get on board with the idea of climate change. Why the resistance? Is it more that it's political, this side wants action, so this side's going to resist, or what's going on?
Well, I think clearly, just watching what's going on, even right now with President Trump and William Barr, and you watch the comments about, he's in contempt yet, you know, when they tried to get Eric Holder to come, he didn't come. The very same people today who are claiming Barr's in contempt thought Holder wasn't, and the very people who are defending Holder were screaming at, defending Barr, screaming at Holder. So, yeah, part of it is no matter, you know, if someone on this side comes up with the idea, clearly this side's going to oppose it no matter what. I think also part of the problem has been with the climate change conversation, at least from my perspective, is that a lot of people, look, there's no doubt, I don't think anybody denies that the planet is changing. I mean, you got a confined area, the population is growing, we're changing technology, things are happening, it's going to have ramifications on the environment. The problem, I think, from the resistance on a lot of people, at least from me, I can speak from my perspective, is that when everything is being driven, I'm being asked to make all the changes, right? When you're being told, hey, we're going to cap emission standards in the United States, and yet we're not the worst. We're not the worst on the emission standards.
Isn't it appropriate to ask, if it's human caused, isn't it appropriate to ask people?
Of course it is,
fix,
but if the same people are telling you we're going to cap our emissions in New Mexico, for instance, and yet it's not the emission standards don't stop at the state boundaries and don't stop at country boundaries, and you go south, you go to China, you go to other places, and they're 100 times worse than we are, and there's nothing being done in these accords to force them to have to do stuff. I think the result becomes, well, why should I pay $15 a gallon if nobody else is going to? And at the end of the day, it's going to have little to minimal effect in the outcome.
I hear you, but I'm not sure if that's a winning argument with these young people.
Well, I think,
you see what I mean?
But that's not what you asked me.
You're talking about the chatter between
but that's not what you asked me.
people
Now, if you ask me about the kids, Laura hit the nail on the head. You know, and I've got 4 kids. Gene, listen, and I'm sure we'll get the emails about it. The reason Congress worries about Social Security and Medicaid and all that stuff is because those people vote and these kids don't. Gotcha. Right? So you can walk out of class all you want, you can hold up signs all you want, but when you don't stand in line for 5 minutes or forget it's election day, no one's going to pay attention to you that's making decisions.
Interesting point there. Just a quick topic switch, Tom, but still with young people. There was another walkout of a sort about the APS board tabling a measure last summer about using NRA funds, National Rifle Association funds, for high schoolers here. And there's a group of high schoolers that want to disassociate themselves from the organization, from what Laura mentioned earlier about gun violence in schools and such. Another example of how this generation is not having it, and they're taking it to the streets a little bit. Yeah. You see what I mean? It's part of this whole thing, isn't it, where they're just being more active?
They are more active, which is great because they're being involved in the discussion. My concern is the informed advocacy, because you have the advocacy side, but you don't necessarily have the informed aspect. So sometimes you'll just get kids go, oh, there's a protest, I want to get out of class, I want to be in the protest too, as opposed to those who are deeply passionate about the particular issue. Advocacy, influence, and message are really the 3 key things if you want to be able to have a conversation to be heard. The advocacy is that what's your connection to that particular issue? Is it a personal connection, or do you have information that you have to share? Influence, are you yelling just to be heard, or are you really communicating a story? And oftentimes with protests like that, you have more of folks who just want to be heard. Right. And it turns into being a clanging cymbal. People aren't really listening. They're saying, oh, well, they're just protesting something, I don't know what it is. When actually the power is in that one-on-one conversation. And in that conversation is where that message comes in. What is the story that they have to share? And so, if they're effective in that, then I think the young generation, whether it be Generation Y, X, Z, millennials, silent, who knows what, if they're able to share their story in a very informed and reasonable way, that's how you change minds.
There you go. I want to pick up on this. I'm still on this APS thing here. The board. The inaction of the board to vote on this. Is there a message to the students saying, we're just going to let you kind of pass through here, we've got this covered? You see what I mean? It just amps up the frustration these young people are not being heard.
Well, I think there are many segments of our society that are frustrated because we've not been heard beyond just young people. Native communities, communities of color, marginalized poor white people have not been heard. I think I guess I'm going to say, I think their frustration is the fact, and my frustration is the fact that we can't even protect our children in their schools. Now, something is wrong with that. If we can't protect our children in their schools, given the number of shootings and the number of deaths that have occurred, how are we going to impact and provide security and a healthier planet in which life will continue? If we can't even protect our children in their schools, and we're failing them, and I would imagine, these children, I mean, they're a lot more aware of things than we were.
That's right.
In our time.
Everything old is new again. You know, people went to the streets in the 70s and change got made. Now these young people are on the streets and they're looking for change as well. Out of time on that one. After the break, it's our land. And when this group comes back, Albuquerque's reaction to the migrant surge.